all the photos that were used in their funeral, all the photos that were used on like any tribute were the photos that I took over the past like 12 years that I've been taking photos of them. And um, I think that's when it really hit me.
Welcome to Elevating Good. I'm Marenica, and today I'm sitting with someone whose work on LinkedIn grabbed my attention, Jimell Greene. Jimell is a Washington, D.C. area photographer and cinematographer whose mission is breathtakingly simple. Let people be exactly who they are and make it look beautiful. Jimell grew up in Detroit, built his career over 16 years, one relationship at a time, and is currently behind one of the most urgent documentary projects in America right now, the Department of Government Waste, which is documenting the human faces behind the federal workforce displacement of 2025. What you're about to hear is a conversation about photography, yes, but really, it's about what it means to truly see someone and what happens when you do.
I am a kid from Detroit, Michigan, for going all the way back, of a single mother. She got a job working with the government when I was 10, so I moved to outside of Washington, D.C. When I was around 10 and lived there for about 20 years. Got into photography while I was in college, and I was always the kid with a disposable camera at parties, never really thinking I could make any money of it. But, I really enjoy taking pictures. And in college, I met some people that worked at a wedding studio and started working there and kind of piecemealed my career together over the past 16 years. And so now here we are. I'm in Baltimore now, but still part of the Maryland, DC, Virginia area.
Yeah, fantastic. And your earliest memory of a camera and being engaged with a camera was what? What walk me back to that time? What was that? When was that? What was it like?
That's interesting. I would say it wasn't more, it was more so like the photos as opposed to the camera itself, and I don't know if people do this nowadays, but growing up, your family would have family albums, right? And you would see
Mhm.
pictures of your parents as young children or your grandparents as 30-year-olds, right? Or their parents, right? And it kind of was like mystical to me as a child to like, it was almost like time traveling, right? And in a way, kind of humanizing your family, right? I was like, okay, my grandparents weren't always old, right? They were in their 20s, right? And they probably went through similar things like me, or my mom was a little kid at one time. And so I think that's what kind of really intrigued me is just seeing like all the photos on the walls of like my
Mm.
grandparents' house.
Wow. So that is interesting that that's what connected you with them was actually the photos. I love that for Jamel. It started not with a camera, but with photographs. Those albums on his grandparents' walls, time travel, he called it, a way of humanizing the people who made him. We'll be back to that idea, humanizing, because it keeps showing up in Jamel's work. So, when did you realize that photography then wasn't just a skill, but it really was something that you felt that you were called to do?
Uh, I think I think I got that feeling, that calling, when I started photographing my family myself. I got into photography, like took it seriously around 2010, around the same time my grandmother had gone to the hospital with a health scare, and my mom was like, "This is it," and so I brought my camera everywhere. I would bring my camera to Detroit. I would bring it to the hospital, and I would just document them. And at first it was kind of awkward. They were like, "Why do you have this camera here?" But eventually they just got used to me with my camera being there. And fast forward, you know, they eventually passed, unfortunately, a couple years ago. But you know, all the photos that were used in their funeral, all the photos that were used on like any tribute were the photos that I took over the past like 12 years that I've been taking photos of them. And um, I think that's when it really hit me. Another thing is like when people look at my website, I have all these cool videos and portraits of people, but everyone always identifies with the work of what I did with my grandparents. And I think it's because it comes from a sincere place. There was really no commercial appeal to it. It wasn't like I'm trying to make money. I'm not trying to do this for anyone else but myself and my family. And I think that's really what kind of showed me that like there's value in what I do, right? And it's not monetary value, right? It's kind of I don't even know what the word is, but it's like family value, right? Or something that's more worth more than money, right? The memories, if you want to put it that way.
Mhm. It's fascinating to me that photos can capture so much more than just the person. So, what do you think? You just made one point about your heart or your intention behind the photo, that somehow you feel motivation impacted the photo. Is there something more to that, do you think? Like the famous photographers that I hear about,
Hmm.
it seems like they're able to sort of almost like capture somebody's soul in a photo,
Hmm.
or something more than just the still of that item or that figure. How do you think photographers are able to do that?
Well, I can't tell you my secret. No, I'm just kidding.
Or
It's
you'll
a
have to
great
kill
secret.
me.
Yeah. That's a great question. And, I can't say that everyone can do that. I feel like a special kind of person can do that. It doesn't have to be a photographer. It could be like a therapist or just your friend who you can open up to. I think it's photographers, artists, certain people are able to kind of be a blank canvas for people, right? And just let people open up and kind of be themselves without fear of judgment. And I think I that's a skill that I've kind of realized I had from a young age, where people will kind of tell me things, maybe things I didn't want to know, but they would feel comfortable sharing things
TMI.
with me. Yes, exactly. TMI. And so I think that's kind of translated into photography. It's just letting people feel comfortable being themselves in front of you.
The act of being a photographer and having no judgment, is that something that you have innately, or you really, because you said you have that skill. Do you think it's partly innate and a skill that's learned, or both, or either?
It might be a symptom of the way I was raised. Children are supposed to be seen and not heard, right? Type of thing where I grew up. And so I was always more of a fly on the wall, and I kind of just let life happen around me, and didn't really put myself in the middle of things. So obviously, I mean, I have opinions, I have thoughts, but I think it's important to again let people show you who they are, because my thoughts are might not always be right, right? And maybe I might learn something from a different perspective. So I think I just take that fly on the wall approach, and that's something that's just I assume that's because I was raised that way.
Mhm. I value that a lot. And we do here on Elevating Good podcasts this idea of the inherent need to approach people with respect. and
Mm.
and receive them as they are. And so that really stands out to me. I know that that's something that we share, that idea of the
Yeah,
importance of that idea.
100%. And I think working in DC, you come across people who have obviously different beliefs than you, right? But you still have to work together. You can still be cordial, right? We're all professionals for the
Yes.
most part. So I think maybe the DC area might have some influence on that as well.
A blank canvas for people. Jamel's words. I want you to sit with that for a second because that's an important posture, a way of approaching every human being as someone whose story is worth receiving. It's what we try to practice here on Elevating Good, and it's exactly what led Jimell to launch the most important project of his career so far. Now, this brings me to a very interesting part of your work, which
Hmm.
is the project called Department of Government Waste. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project, what it is, what it means to you, why you do it?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Department of Government Waste was started in early 2025, in on the hills of all the riffing and Doge stuff. Um, my mother was took the fork in the road. I had friends and colleagues who were riffed, and there was a lot of turmoil going on. And one of my friends who was actually riffed came to me. He was like, "Hey, do you think this might be a good project?" Because at the time I had just posted a photo of the former director at the FDA, and he had resigned in protest because his whole team was let go.
Wow.
And he was like, "There's no reason for me to even come into work." So I posted some images of him that I had taken. I was like, "This guy's a stand-up guy. I really like what he's doing, et cetera, et cetera." And so my friend Micah came to me with this project after seeing those images. And then we kind of like had a couple Zoom calls and met with some former feds and talked to people at Open Hub about how to form this project, how to get space for the project, how to kind of iron out any problems that may come up. And so maybe I think in maybe June or July of last year, we started actually doing the portraits and interviewing people. So it's a project, a portrait project, against a weathered American flag, and the subject has the option to remain anonymous and be silhouetted, or they can show their face. And then we interview them and we ask them. It's not really about politics. That was one of the things that we talked about in the Zoom calls. We don't want to be inherently political. Obviously, it's political, but we don't ask them about what do they think about the administration, etc. We ask them how are they doing. Like how's your mental health? How is your family? Um, how do you feel about America right now? Those types of things. And it's kind of in my head, it was a much smaller project when we started, and it's kind of taken a life of its own in a way. If I hadn't started that, I wouldn't be here with you today, type of thing. I wouldn't know the people at Open Hub. But also, it showed me that there are so many people in the world that are doing good, that are doing selfless acts, not just for Americans, but for the whole world, right? Because we're all in this together. And it's really heartbreaking because some of them are like, I just don't understand why people don't like me, right? Or they think I'm corrupt, or, you know,
Wow.
people break down in tears and stuff like that. And it's heartbreaking because the work that they did is not just a job for them, it's really a part of who they are. And so the project is trying to just humanize people, right? Just to show you that Amy is a mother and has an ailing parent that she was taking care of that she's having a hard time taking care of now because she's unemployed, right? And I feel like that is people can connect with that, right? Because it's not just
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
So that's the project so far, and the idea is to get as many stories as possible. Maybe make a magazine, a quarterly magazine. Hopefully, make a coffee table book. Hopefully, be in a gallery one day. But right now, it's just collecting stories, and hopefully trying to connect people with other people who can help them because there are a lot of people out there that are still struggling.
Yes. What was the most surprising thing for you in documenting for this project? Something maybe you didn't expect to find when you started?
I think one of the most surprising things was that the fear of repercussion, right? And kind of the reason why we did started doing silhouettes, and part of the reason why there are a lot of people that are interested but are afraid to participate, because again, this is America, right? You have the freedom of speech. Also, a lot of these people were unemployed, right? So it's not like they were talking against their current employer. But they're all afraid of repercussions. And at the time, I guess being an artist, I was like, I don't get it. But it only took a couple days to get it. You started seeing kind of what was happening in DC and what kind of things were happening to people that were speaking up and speaking out. So I think that was kind of the most surprising thing to me because this is
Mm.
America.
So, do you yourself have any fear of repercussions because of the work you're doing then as an artist?
Uh,
Here.
I don't think so. Um, I, I I've had that thought. Um, but I guess if that does happen, then I'm doing something right, right? So, if it happens, I will consider it a good thing.
Yeah. I think of some of the great photographers, you might know them more than I do. But some of the people that photographed things like the Vietnam, when the US left Vietnam, and some of those just startling photos that National Geographic sometimes captures in these environments that are very, very stressful and harsh or oppressive. And I think how some of those photos, like the little girl who was running through the streets naked, and, the Vietnamese, that classic
Mm,
picture, still speak today. And I'm
mhm,
thinking, this type of project has a potential to be a lasting kind of visual of a snapshot in time, this time that we're in. And I think that that says a lot. And also, what speaks to me um, is that it you're humanizing people. I mean, we're all about that. Again, it's Elevating Good podcast. We really believe that people are made in the image of God. They're to be respected and seen as people and honored and treated well. So I love that. That made me like, wow, I got to interview Jimell
Thank you,
because it
thank
just
you.
really made me. It stood out about you that the goal of wanting to humanize people. I just thought that was so compelling, and so I'm looking forward to seeing where this project is going to go. I'm so excited to see down the road, maybe years from now, where it has come from, gone to. And you're doing all this on your own, essentially, right? Do you have any support, grants, major sponsors? All right,
No,
listeners,
no.
if you hear about this, please
Yes,
consider supporting Jimell. We joked about the last time we spoke. We joked about providing your Cash App and
right.
maybe some other
QR
maybe
code
at
up
the
there.
end. Yeah, yeah. Fear of repercussions in America, and from people who weren't even currently employed. That says something about the moment we're in right now and why visual storytelling like Jimell's matters. Because one image, as he's about to remind us, can change everything. When you are photographing people, is there any one person that you would say has made a lasting impact on you? I'm curious who that was and like how they may have impacted you, not necessarily just in Department of Government Waste, but in your work body of work as a whole.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a definitive answer. I think there are multiple people that have left a lasting impression, and it's usually the people that you get a lot of people who are busy, right? They're like, okay, let's just get this done. You got 5 minutes. Okay. I got more
Okay.
important things to do.
Right, right.
But it's always the people that are kind, who like are giving you their time, right? And kind of know that it's a process. And also people that, want to know about me, right? You know, because oftentimes, I'm asking them the questions. Um, I wouldn't say it's one person. I can't think of one definitive person that I photographed. It's usually a lot of good people out there that I photographed who you actually have like a genuine connection with. He might follow up with a couple months later, who they might reach out a year later, 2 years later, and they're like, "Hey, can you take some photos of me and my family or something like that?" That type of thing.
Well, I sometimes think that as artists, being somewhat of a creative myself, the
Hmm.
tendency is to, as you said, is sort of hold yourself back behind the scenes, right? And the
Hmm.
subject, your client, is the focus of everything. It becomes very uncomfortable to sort of come from behind the
Yeah,
the camera, the podcast microphone, or whatever it is, and
yeah.
be in front of everything. So I
Uh-huh.
really put you on the spot, didn't I, when I when I asked you to do this? But I think it you from my perspective too, what you're saying, it rings true to me that the people that make the most impact, the ones that you see like, wow, they're really doing something that's impacting people and that they really care, that
Hmm.
they care about their work or they care about you and not just getting this thing done, right?
Hmm.
I also I could that rings true with me. I've seen that as well. What is
Absolutely.
the
And I
yeah,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say when we first met at Open Gov Hub, I noticed that about you. You weren't you were there for headshots, but you also wanted to know what I was doing and about my process and all that. So I could already tell like what kind of person you were in those like 5 minutes that we had together. So
Wow.
you're a good one.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I try. What do you think, and what would you say is your process now that you mentioned it? When you're, let's say, I know you do different types of photography. So you're doing like, the person who has 5 minutes and you're just called in to take a photo of somebody, right, in their office or whatever. And then you have the headshots, and then you have your photo essays, more or less, with the Department of Government Waste. So, but pick one of those and tell me kind of generally what is your process as a photographer? How do you move from the beginning when you set up that and that person is in front of you? What's going through your mind and what are you processing and what do you do? Like, walk me through a little bit of that.
Wow. That's a heavy question.
So,
Let's see. Let
so
me think.
not technical per se, but like,
Right.
what are the thoughts that you like? What's going through your mind, more or less?
Right. Well, I think with any project, again, I try to take a step back and I try to notice maybe how the person is standing, or if are they nervous? Are they like playing with their fingers or tapping their leg, or kind of cross their arms, and kind of closed off, um, as opposed to someone who's open and kind of, maybe an extrovert. And then I work from there. Maybe if they are more reserved, I'll just put the camera down and we'll just have a conversation, and just try to get to know them. Because I mean, I feel most of the people I work with are not models, right? They are not used to being in front of the camera. A lot of them actually don't enjoy being in front of the camera because they don't like the way they look, or maybe they've worked with a bad photographer in the past, or whatever it may be. And so it's just a lot of like easing their mind, um, finding out what their better side is, right? Giving them options, showing them like, okay, this is what you look like from this side. This is what you look like from this side. Which one do you like more? Um, and just it's really a collaboration, right? I feel like with anything that I do, it's a collaboration, and I feel like the projects that tend to not work are when one party thinks they are the end all be all.
Ah,
Um,
interesting.
yeah.
Mm.
I mean, sometimes that's the way it is in commercial work. It's like you're just there to fulfill a
Right,
vision,
right. Hmm.
which is fine as long as the check clears. That's fine with me.
Hey, you get them all, don't you? Some of them you need to get that check to clear, and others you're like, wow, this is a little different, right? A little
Right, right.
extra.
So I did some work with the National Presbyterian School in DC, and I was doing a video campaign for their new playground. And I remember we had all a bunch of these calls about what the video should look like, and none of us could kind of like figure it out. So I went to go visit them, and it was for a new playground, and it was recess. And I was just like, I just sat back and just watched, and I was like, this is what the video is. It's just kids enjoying themselves, being young, being playing with leaves and sticks and making friends in like 2 seconds because their favorite color is both green or whatever, and to answer your question, it's again, I just stood back and kind of just saw what was in front of me. And that was
Yes.
all I needed to do to shoot the video campaign, and they loved it. So there you go.
It's almost like you are an interpreter of sorts. And this is where you are a bridge builder. I believe everybody every day is a bridge builder in some way. And in your line of work, you connect the story. So you connect what's happening in the world to other people who don't know about it, to show them, to tell a story to them about something. It seems to me. Am I right? Or what do you think of that statement?
I agree. I never thought about it that way, but I think you're right. I am trying to build a bridge, or, open up a wormhole to show you a little peek of something that you might not experience on a daily basis. So,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah.
Is there a way that and you say you approach people as you find them, essentially, is what you told me earlier. Is there a way that you keep your subjects or I guess your subject or your canvas, whoever's there in front of you, keep from being imposing on them your own view or or any bias in some way? Is there a way, like, or have you found that challenged in some way? Like, is somebody who, wow, they want me to do this work, but I really don't agree with or like
Mm,
maybe who they stand for, the
mm,
organization, who they are, or
mm.
whatever. How do you keep that neutral sort of receiving people as they are perspective as a photographer? First, have you done that before? And then how do you keep that perspective?
But that is a great question. And I will say that I don't know if I've done it as the head photographer or videographer, cinematographer, but as an assistant, like I've worked at the Heritage Foundation, you know, and if anyone that's listening knows what the Heritage Foundation is, they probably know that it's probably not aligned with my values. But again, it's just, for me, it was just a job. And the people there, again, they respected me, so I respected them. And I think at the end of the day, we're all human, right? We all go through similar things. Now, if Heritage Foundation wanted me to come photograph something for them or do video for them, I might say no. Just because that is in like that conflicts with what I'm currently doing, right, with Department of Government Waste, and I don't want any confusion there, right?
Yes, yes.
Because you can't play both sides, right? So I guess to answer your question, I haven't been in that situation as the lead, and I don't know if I would put myself in that situation.
I see. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
So have you ever seen where a single picture could maybe change someone's perspective on something? I mentioned earlier about some of these photographic people who are, photographers of, well established, older, like long gone, maybe photographers have done where there's
Hmm.
like this one picture and it's like, wow, maybe like Ansel Adams or whatever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. Um, do you think that a single picture can change how people feel maybe across whatever difference they have? They're this pictures of one world that you've never been, you never experienced, but you see this one picture and it has an impact on your life. It changes something. Have you ever seen that happen, or has it happened to you?
Yeah, I think we can go back to like the 1950s with Gordon Parks. I don't know if you're familiar with Gordon Parks,
Yes, I am. Yes. Tell
but
us
he
who he is for the listeners.
he was born in 1912, African American man, and he ended up shooting for Vogue, doing projects on the civil rights. He was the director of Shaft, right in a time in the middle of, mid 20th century, right? Which I didn't know was even possible. I didn't even know there were black photographers shooting for Vogue, but he was kind of like, I mean, he might still be like the Michael Jordan of black photographers, right? He is like that guy.
Yes. Yeah, he
Um,
is.
and his work is still like I'll be scrolling on Instagram and I'll still stop and stare because his work is so good. And he had the innate ability to not only shoot for Vogue, right? He could go down south and document what was happening with segregation, but then also go up to Harlem and entrench himself with like Harlem gangs, right? And he kind of had this ability to be a chameleon and take these amazing shots in different, areas. And one of the photos that really stands out to me is it's a photo of a woman and her daughter. It's in color. I think it's in like Alabama, maybe Selma, and she's standing underneath like a colors only sign, and she's wearing like this blue. It's like very like 1950s, 1960s dress, but it's like I always stop and stare at that because it's in a way kind of romantic in the way that the lighting and the color. You give it like this nostalgia, but then you also see like colors only sign, right? And it brings you back to reality. So I I think that is one image, but then again, you can go even further and like to like 2020 with George Floyd or Michael Brown. I mean, there might be like videos, but it's still like an image or a short video can definitely impact. society, right? And we saw that in 2020.
You brought up something that I've been wanting to ask you for a while, and it did come up when we spoke earlier. And that is you being a Black man, a Black photographer in 2026. I mean, what is, tell us about your experience, what you believe your experience as a Black man in America today lends to your work as a photographer, videographer, cinematographer.
Um, it's a loaded question. Let's see if we can unpack that. Um, in a way, I think it's definitely a blessing, and I think it helps with my work in a lot of ways because in a lot of these areas that I work in, I'm kind of the odd man out, right? Usually when you think of a photographer, you're probably not thinking of someone that looks like me, um, unfortunately. And so I think that shows up in my work where I want to include everybody, right? I'm not just assuming you are one thing because you look one way or the other. It's definitely been at moments challenging because there are times where people on set or clients might talk to my assistant who is white before they talk to me, right? Or
Wow.
um,
Wow.
or they might just not think I'm that good of a photographer, right? Just because of the way I look.
Mm.
Um, so it's complicated, but I think it's also a blessing. And I think what happened in 2020 kind of in a way affected my career positively because I'm a black man, right? I started getting more work. I
That's
started
interesting.
I
Mm.
was on the APA board, the American Photographic Artists of DC. Got on the board that year because of my protest photos in DC. Um, so I think being a minority is definitely interesting, especially in America, especially in today's right now. But growing up, I've kind of I guess acclimated to it because coming from Detroit, which is like all black, right? You're black
Yeah.
or white usually, and you hang out with
Yes.
black people, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
moving to Northern Virginia, where I was like one of maybe four black people, right?
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
especially at that time. I think there's
Yeah.
more now, right? And then there's even the difference of like you're black versus you're African, right? Right.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
um, and so growing up there, I think that helped me now because I won't say people are racist, but they're kind of ignorant, right? They come with, assumptions or you must listen to this music or you must play this sport or whatever, because of the way you look. And then it's just the opportunity to like educate people, right? And show them that, I'm a human, right? Like, I like Spike Lee movies, but I also like Christopher Nolan or, whoever, right? I'm not a monolith. We're not a monolith.
Black people are not a monolith. That's a reminder for all of us that our assumptions can be wrong. And Jimell has been navigating those assumptions with grace and grit for his entire career. Now he's navigating a new kind of pressure, one that's coming for all creatives.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah,
I,
totally.
I think that all prepared me for 2026.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because right now there's a lot going on in our world with men and black men, frankly.
Mhm.
Um, and we don't hear enough, and not that you're a monolith, but we don't hear enough stories from our black men.
Yeah.
I honestly, we don't. And I know there's a lot going on, in that's impacting black men and men, period.
Hmm.
So it it just does something for I think all of us to hear. Like, what is your experience, and what are you, seeing and going through in the work you do? Is there some sort of divide or a gap you think um, that you between people or through your work that you feel that you're especially equipped or called to close in some way? Like what type of what do you think your work you've been why do you think this is your calling and your work? Like what is it that you think you do through your work that's different than maybe other people or other photographers? What makes you unique?
Um, well, again, it comes back to, I think, me taking a step back and just taking people for who they are. I feel like we could talk about being a minority, we could talk about being a woman, we could talk about, I feel like in some ways, I'm not going to say some ways, like my industry is male dominated and it's white male dominated. And I feel like sometimes they get the benefit of the doubt just because of what they look like, right? Or maybe who they know. And so I feel like I guess what I'm trying to bridge or whatever is just to show like, hey, I might bring a female assistant on set who's just as good as this other dude. Or I might bring another African American or a Latino person on set. And I think I've heard this a couple times where people will be like, "Oh wow, I really like your crew because you're very diverse, right? We're not used to that." Um, I I I mean, uh, sorry, can I get the question one more time?
Yeah,
Just
no, I was asking like what, and you've answered it.
okay,
What unique lens do you think you bring to your craft? What is
okay,
it uniquely you feel that you do that maybe other photographers don't? And you just mentioned a couple of things, bringing
okay,
diversity into the equation, the way you step back and look at things.
okay. All right. And I'll add to that, it's just um again, just letting people be who they are, not imposing my view of who you are into the lens, and trying to collaborate. Like I think it was really hard to define what kind of work I did a few years ago, even 10 years ago. And I think over the years, you kind of figure out who you are. And I'm a people first photographer. I'm a portrait photographer. Doesn't matter if it's actual photo or with a video camera. I tell people stories, and I'll make it look beautiful, but I'm really letting the subject shine and not necessarily me.
Hmm. What is it that you think right now in the photography industry? What do you think the industry needs to improve on, maybe gets wrong that you would like to see maybe get right?
I think a lot has changed. I'll start by saying that, especially since like this decade, where you are getting more female directors of photographers and when like people of color in front of the camera and on crews and sets. And I think that is really probably the biggest thing because again, we all have our individual perspectives and histories, and the way you grew up is different than the way I grew up. There's obviously going to be some commonality between that, but you have your own perspective. And when you pick up a camera or you do a podcast or whatever, it is a one of one, right? And I think the industry could you utilize that, right? I think, and I think that's happening in some ways. Like some of the bigger blockbusters that are happening are like YouTube creators, right? Because they built a fan base on YouTube and they're
Heard
doing like their
that.
own thing, right?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Which is kind of crazy. And so I think we still have a long way to go, obviously, but I think we are progressively getting there.
Are you concerned about AI? Because photographs, artwork are now being basically scavenged or copied or, recreated without really giving credit to artists, is what I'm hearing. People in like the acting and those industries that are allied to cinematography and photography. Tell me your thoughts about the emergence of AI and your future as a photographer or the industry given AI. What are your thoughts around that?
The future is bleak. No, I'm just kidding. What's funny? It was maybe 2024. I was sitting at a cafe in Paris with some friends, right? And we are
Yeah.
talking about we're in this art rich city, right? It's
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
skip on any of the culture, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
food or art or whatever. And we started talking about AI,
Yeah.
and my friends were who aren't creatives, were kind of like,
Yeah.
what's the big deal? And I was like, well, what if Coca-Cola, instead of hiring a visual effects company to do their winter campaign with the polar bears, just puts in a computer and types in polar bear drinking Coca-Cola, blah blah blah. Fast forward to 2025 Christmas, Coca-Cola got in trouble for the exact same thing.
Wow.
Um, and I've worked events where there have been models there talking about AI where they will take your photo, but then they'll put an AI head on you, right?
Hmm.
And so it's really scary. It's scary, I think, more so for like commercial work.
Hmm.
Like brands like Coca-Cola or, brands like Gucci or Louis Vuitton, right? Where you actually kind of sell a product.
Yes.
Um, it's not so much a big deal right now for headshots or stuff for magazines, or documentary work, obviously. But I think it's creeping up. I've had someone who did their headshot on an AI and they're like, "Hey, can you make it look like the rest on the website?" Right? And it's kind of
Yeah.
insulting, right, to send a photographer AI headshot.
Something done by AI.
Yeah. So I would say it is scary. There are uses for it, like Photoshop right now and Lightroom have so many AI features that save us so much time, right?
Mm,
Where we're not having to spend hours touching up
mm,
things, where it can kind of just do
mm,
it. So there are
mm.
benefits there, but it is scary in, I guess, a bigger picture kind of scenario because commercial work is like where the big money is, right? You look at
Yes.
photographers in the 90s or in the 80s, they were living like these lush lifestyles, which, really doesn't happen that much. And this was even before AI. So now,
Mm.
um, it's scary, but I feel like companies that still value the human aspect, the actual art, will still be out there, hopefully.
I've been talking to or and reading some of people's responses, especially creatives, people who are writers and not digital creators, but creators online, different social media locations and stuff. And some of the things I'm hearing are like there's two groups, right? There's the group that believe that there will always be an aspect of the human that will be wanted and needed in the creative. And then there are others that believe, oh, all of that's just going to be taken over. And basically they'll all be out of jobs.
Yeah, it's scary.
So it's interesting. Yeah. And I'm noticing, I mean, it certainly is everywhere. I mean, I use AI to do some of my production and prep work for my podcast and all that as well. And I think it's a technology to be used, but it is definitely something to be careful about as well. So I agree with you there. What are your thoughts about the rise of like social media, smartphones, as far as like being storyteller and photographer? Because now these phones are amazing in terms of what they can take. And you're talking about the YouTubers now producing videos and all that.
Mhm.
Uh, what is there a different, like, what does it mean to be a professional visual storyteller now, given is it harder or easier given this technology that we all have now in our hands, these phones and stuff?
It's a great question. And I think it's harder, but also easier, in a way. Um,
Yeah, I can see that.
you know what I mean? And, I kind of got into this in a time of gatekeeping where it's like you have to have this camera and this lens and it has to be like the professional version of it, right? To be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know, a camera is a camera, right? I've always heard that it's like the best camera is the camera that you have with you, and that is 99% of the time is going to be your phone. And I tell people are like, "What kind of camera should I get, Jimell?" And I'm like, "Just use your cell phone, right? It's going to be probably close to as good, right? If you're not making giant prints or you're not doing professional work, um, then you're always going to have it with you. To say it's easier and harder, like it's harder because everyone has a cell phone, everyone has social media, and you're kind of just trying to like cut through the noise. Um, but again, it's easier because everyone has a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I would turn into an old man if I were like, that's not real creativity,
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not there yet because some of my favorite photos I've taken on my phone.
Oh,
A lot of the work that I've printed that's in my house have been
yeah.
cell phone photos.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of surprising, and I mean it's a camera, right? I think there is some level of like decorum where you don't want to go to do like a magazine shoot with your cell
Yeah.
phone,
Yeah.
right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Or something like that. But I know there are plenty of people or plenty of clients who are fine with cell phone video, right?
Mhm.
Because you can always edit it and make it look professional.
Yeah.
Um, I guess my biggest qualm is like with social media, it's like I don't want to have to like sing and dance for people to look at my photos, that is my biggest qualm. So there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with using your cell phone.
Uh-huh.
Obviously things change as time changes, but um, yeah, it's a camera just like anything else.
He predicted the Coca-Cola moment in a Paris cafe because he'd been paying attention his whole life. And what he wants to pass on to the next generation is exactly that: attention, patience, and the courage to start anyway. I asked you this a little bit earlier, and it has to do with if a young Black boy comes to you today and says, hey, I want to be a photographer because they've seen the work that you've done and they're impressed and they really want to try to either videography, cinematography. What would you tell them?
I, I will tell them that one, it is a marathon and not a sprint. And I feel like a lot of people, regardless of age or whatever, might pick up a camera and be like, I'm gonna be a professional photographer, but they don't really know like what it takes, right? Like how much grit that you need. Like there are gonna be months, years where you're not like doing anything, right? It seems like you're chipping away at that that tree, but it's not going, and then eventually it will fall. Um, but again, I will say, and I said this earlier, that we all have a our own unique perspective, and I think, um, especially being like a young black man or a young black woman, especially in our community, I always wanted to do a project on like women in church, right? Because my grandparents were Baptists and they always, wore the big hats and the suits with the shoes, right? And that's such like a niche cultural thing, right? That
Yeah.
only someone like me or you or a young black man
Yeah.
has that access to, right? But it
Yeah.
might have mass appeal, right? Because you're
Yes.
showing a world that other people aren't familiar with. Um, So I would say go for it. Just know that again, it's a marathon. Have a vision. It's listen to advice, but don't take it all with a grain of salt because there's no one way to do this. And in some ways, it's more about who you know, and it's more so about like the business side as opposed to like actually being a good photographer in a lot of ways.
Hmm. Can you pull that thread a little bit more for me? When you say it's actually more about the business side than being a good photographer, to explain that.
Um, Because, okay, I'll just use myself as an example. I spent a lot of time just learning, perfecting like lighting and,
Mm.
maybe talking to people or being comfortable behind the camera, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't really spend a lot of time earlier learning about marketing,
Yes.
right? Or like QuickBooks and
Yeah.
all the stuff that you need to do to be a successful business. So I feel
Mm.
like a lot of times, I mean, you can go on Instagram or anything right now and you can see people who might not be like technically great photographers or videographers or whatever, but they're very successful, but probably because they are better at social media and
Oh,
marketing and
yes.
going to networking events and et cetera, like that's kind of stuff. And I think that is in some ways more important than the actual technical aspects,
Of taking the
unfortunately.
photos.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of us think that our work is so good that we're going to take a photo and like Nike's going to start calling us and we're going to be the next big thing, but that's not how it works, unfortunately.
uh, huh. So tell us where you see yourself in another 5 to 10 years. I hate that question, but I just had to ask it because you're talking about it's a marathon, not a sprint. I'm just curious where where do you see yourself in, I don't know, 5 to 10 years with photography or in life?
Gonna be on the French Riviera drinking some rosé. No, I wish. Well, who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe. I think my goals, and it's funny that you asked me that because I was really into like the 5, 10 year thing when I first
Oh,
started, like the 1 year, 5 year, 10 year thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and then life happens.
Yes.
So I would like to get into more commercial work. I would like to get into more like narrative, storytelling, and kind of doing like these bigger projects like Department of Government Waste, where my work is now in galleries or in museums, right? That is like my ultimate goal, right? If I can get my work
Okay.
in the Smithsonian, I can die happy.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so it's really big picture stuff, right?
Yeah.
I want to start shooting campaigns for Nike, right? Or be in
Mhm.
museums. That is
Yes.
kind of where my head is now.
And so, what are some projects that you're doing in addition to Department of Government Waste or things that you're pursuing that you think are setting you up for that? I know I asked you about grants or sponsorships. I did, I think you had said to me earlier you've been looking into some of those things. Are there
Mhm.
other sorts of things that you're doing to position yourself for that?
A lot of prayer, a lot of prayer.
Yeah. God
um,
help me. God help
yeah,
me.
please, please. I keep a notebook of like projects that I like to do. Um,
Yes.
and there are several. There's one that I will hopefully be able to do this summer. It's been an idea for a couple years. It's in a way kind of like Andy Warhol's soup cans, where it's like different images, but of the same thing, just different colors.
Oh, yes, yes.
Um, and but this is with ice cream and it's photographs and stuff like that in a way to kind of appeal to commercial clients like ice cream companies or jewelry companies because you'll see their hands and an idea is that you'll be able to like kind of tell who the person is just based on their wrist and their fingers,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so I've I have a couple ideas. There's like a basketball project that I want to do where, instead of showing, Nike does like all these athletic, handsome men dripping in sweat, like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ideal human body. And when you go,
Ideal.
ideal, right? But when you go play pickup basketball, you're never playing against those guys. You're playing against someone who's maybe
Yeah.
bald, who has like a beer
Right.
belly.
Right.
Um, and so I kind of want to do like a Nike shoot, but like with
Yeah.
real
Real
people.
people. Yeah.
Right.
Real people. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And
that
kind of
would
pitch
be
that. Yeah.
so cool. I love that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Hey, we are drawing to the end. We might be a
Mhm.
couple minutes over. I hope that won't be a problem for you. I just had like maybe two more questions to ask you.
I'm all
Okay.
yours.
Okay. Um, so tell me a little bit more about like um things that maybe we haven't talked about that, wow, I wish I could just get that in. And somebody down the road, let's say a year from now, is looking at this video, or you're looking back at it like a year later, and you're like, gosh, I wish I had just said that at that point. Um, is there something else that you'd want to add?
For sure. I think that we are all special and we are all not special in a way because it doesn't take a lot to do what I do, right? I just, for like Department of Government Waste, to do a project, to show light on people, right? Or like what you're doing a podcast, right? You just did it. And there are plenty of people that I've met through Open Gov Hub or Department of Government Waste who have turned a negative into a positive, right? The people at One Aid or We Are Well Fed, um, who have like spun, trauma into helping other people. And I think it's important to know that if you're listening to this or you're watching this, that you can do that too, right? It doesn't have to be something big. It just takes a little initiative, and I'm sure you'll find a community that will support you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And where can we best connect with you and support your work? Now's the chance for the QR code.
QR code. Donate, please. You can find me on Instagram. It's just my name, Jimell Greene. Should I say it, like spell it out,
Yeah,
or
go ahead.
Jimellgreen? That's my Instagram. You can find me at departmentofgovernmentwaste.com, spelled out. And also it's on Instagram as well, spelled out. And who knows, I might do a TikTok and start dancing for y'all just so I can get some eyes on me.
That would be your last desperate move.
Yeah. If you see that, check on me.
Yeah. Oh, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today on Elevating Good Podcast, Jimell. And who knows, I might be calling you back again to talk about one of your projects
Well, thank
down
you
the
for having me,
road.
Marinica. I really appreciate it. And anytime, this was a lot of fun. So thank you.
Yeah. We are all special and we're all not special. That's liberating because it means the door is open for you and for me equally right now with whatever you have in your hands. Jimell Greene, you can find him on Instagram at Jimell Greene. That's JIMELLGREENE, and at departmentofgovernmentwaste.com. If his project moves you, support it, share it. And if you know a funder or a gallery, you know your assignment. Thank you for being here, for believing that people are worth seeing, and for refusing to give up on them. Before I let you go, I want to personally invite you somewhere. I just launched the Elevating Good community, Everyday Bridge Builders, on Facebook. It's a space for women of faith who believe in the dignity of every human being and who are joining the daily, sometimes exhausting, sometimes very exhausting, but always worthwhile goal and work of living that out in their relationships, their families, and their communities. If today's conversation stirred something in you, if you heard something in this episode that made you want to go deeper, come continue that conversation with us in the new community. The link is in the show notes. Come find your people. The room is waiting for you. Until next time, I'm Marenica, your host. Keep listening, keep growing, and keep elevating good in your corner of the world. I'm with you on the journey.